Hey guys, time for another story time with Abby. This week I'm reading another book from a page follower called by Brian Parker called Gnash, and it's a zombie book. So I'm really looking forward to this. Before anyone asks, because I've gotten asked this again, my Jedi Knight t-shirt, Jedi Knight Academy, Sun Frog. I know every time I wear a different shirt, I get these PMs, and I go, "Where'd you get that?" And so Sun Frog. They're really cool geeky t-shirts. I really enjoy their shirts. Mostly just because they fit decently. I have that problem. Okay, anyways, back to Gnash, Brian Parker. Brian actually sent me a really nice letter with his book, and since he is the author, and suggested the passage he'd like me to read. Now, I had to cut it down for sake of time, but where we're at in the book is Emery, main character, is on the run from a zombie in the refugee camp. And she's trying to hide, and she's doing all the things that, of course, you do when there's a zombie after you. And I picked my favorite page of this portion to read to you. So here we go. Let's go see what happens to Emery. She picked it up and prayed that there were rounds left, but she didn't know how to check to see if there were. Growing up in the suburb of San Diego hadn't afforded her many opportunities to fire a gun. But she'd seen plenty of movies, so she had a pretty good idea how to aim the rifle. Her immediate threat was the thing that was coming after her. That guy seemed different than the others, almost like it knew what it was doing and had a plan to get her. Then she remembered her conversation from a few days ago at the dining facility with Hank and Bryce. That thing must be one of the originals. One of the zombies infected at the initial Pentagon outbreak. Hank said that they were the leaders of the groups of zombies and looked different than the others. Did this thing intentionally target the camp? Why was it so determined to come after her? Her mind raced as questions with no answers buzzed around her head, but immediately went blank as the creature walked around the corner of the cafeteria. When it saw her, it increased its pace from a walk to what could be considered a trot. God, she swore it was grinning at her. She raised the rifle and aimed down the iron sights. She was only 50 feet from him. Surely she'd hit the goddamn thing. She jerked the trigger and saw dirt fly up behind and to the right of it. Emery ignored the explosion of pain in her shoulder and adjusted her aim to the left and fired again. She was rewarded with a small hole in the thing's stomach and a slight stutter in its step, but it continued towards her. She did her hokey aim to the left thing and pulled the trigger again. The weapon clicked as the firing pin fell on an empty chamber. "Fuck!" she screamed in frustration. She looked around frantically for another weapon, but nothing was in her line of sight. She didn't have any other choice, so she flipped the rifle around and grasped the barrel, intent to defend herself with the M16 club. It reached for her, and she swung the rifle with every ounce of strength in her 5'8" frame. The butt of the weapon hit the outstretched arm, and she heard the bones break, but it meant nothing to the creature. She shoved her club up under the thing's chin and pushed as hard as she could. It was useless as pushing against a brick wall. It was just too strong. She was able to hold the head away from her, but it reached out again with its one remaining arm and grabbed onto her hand. Her fingers felt as if they were being crushed as she pulled it towards herself. Then she was splattered with some type of wet substance, and the pressure on her hand relented, then gave away altogether. She fell forward on top of it as her momentum carried her in the direction she'd be pushing against at the sudden loss of resistance. Emery pushed herself quickly backwards from the creature, but there was nothing to fear any more. The entire top half of its head was missing. She didn't have time to think about what that meant. Several of the zombies from the back of the mob at the gate had turned and started towards her when they heard her fire the rifle moments earlier, and the first of the zombies from the hospital had rounded the corner of the school. She was caught between the two groups. She snatched up the rifle and ran towards the fence. She'd rather take her chances getting stuck in the wire at the top of the fence than end up being a meal. The pulsing sound echoed through the camp again. The noise made her drop to her knees in pain and disorientation. She attempted to block it out by covering her ears, but it was no use. The noise was so incredibly loud that she could feel her teeth rattling in her jaw. "Oh, God! Oh, God! Oh, God!" she repeated over and over to herself. She didn't know what was happening to her, but she realized that she'd pissed herself as she fell over onto her side. I know it's good, isn't it?